Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ruth. It's great to be here in person and to see the folks we got. I'm going to just do a little bit of reorganizing on my screen so our speaker can see what he needs to see when it's time to get there. There we go. And we're excited to welcome Randy Williams. He's a longtime friend and definitely has been in the Sioux City area for many years. And I've always admired his beautiful photography. Welcome, come on in. So we have Randy Williams today. He has started a new venture in retirement. And we are benefiting in his retirement by seeing more of his beautiful posts and beautiful photos. And he's spending more time on the trails, riding his bike and walking and just getting out and about. He serves on the Lost Hills Audubon Society, which also meets here at the Dorothy Pico Nature Center. And he's going to be sharing today a photographic exploration of the sites and wildlife along the trail system at Adams Homestead and Nature Preserve, which is just a stone's throw away across the river in South Dakota. So I hope that we'll get Randy up here and we'll get things driving with between our multimedia system and hope it all works well. Thank you for joining us, and we'll welcome Randy Williams to the platform. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me here today for this. So we'll see what we can do. Can I go ahead and just
your screen?
Okay, so
Hi, come on in. Welcome. Welcome.
we'll see if this works here.
The slideshow. There you go.
Okay, that's what we want. Okay, so we want to get this going here with a slideshow on this. And if you have some issues with me speaking of this, that's kind of why we have the mic here for it. But if you have issues with not being able to hear me, let me know, please. And I'll see what I can do about projecting a bit more for this. I also do have some hearing issues as well, too. And because of that, if we have some questions here at the end for this, I may need to have a translation involved here for it at some point, but we'll try this and see what we can do here. As Dawn mentioned, I retired just last year. I was a medical technologist at Mercy Clinical Laboratories for 39 years. And so I retired at the start of 2021. I've been involved in Lost Hills Audubon Society here since 1981, which was my first Christmas bird count with the group. I've always had an interest in wildlife and the outdoors. And along that line, I also had an interest in photography as well. And that actually dates back to 1972, back in the old film days. And I did a little bit of work with photography from that time, but I really don't feel I did a lot with it until I joined Sioux City Camera Club. And that was back in about 1985. And so I do continue my membership with Sioux City Camera Club as well as with Lost Hills Audubon. And since that time, I feel my photography has improved as I've gone along and learned things from other members of Sioux City Camera Club. So I put this together from some of my images that I've taken out at Adams Homestead Nature Preserve. And I want to start out like I usually do with this. I want to make sure, is there anyone who has not been to Adams Homestead? Okay, do you know where it is? Okay, well, that's kind of why I put this slide on here for this. And I wanted to kind of orient people for this so people know where it is, how you can access to this. And it's just essentially off the McCook exit up in South Dakota as Dawn said, you can see the relationship between Dorothy Pico Nature Center and where Adams Homestead Visitor Center is for this. So it's not that far away here for it. From my house, it's about a 15-mile drive to get out there for it. I also have this here graphic that I prepared here from one of my bicycling apps. This shows the trail system that goes around Adams. I usually refer to this as the figure 8 because of the trails that are there. The big trails, the main trails, are primarily limestone, crushed limestone, and they are essentially in a figure 8 configuration for this. So you have the lake loop that goes up through here, you have Cottonwood Crossing, and then you come on down and you have the Riverloop. And so all of this area in through here it's about 10 miles roughly of trail, and it is crushed limestone. The other areas that are in through here, such as the central area, are grass trails. There are some that lead off into private or onto fenced areas that is private land. You do have a nature trail that's also a grass trail in through here. And then there's a couple other connecting spots in for this. This preserve is about 1,500 acres. It was donated to the people of South Dakota in 1984 by Maud and Mary Adams. Inside of this, you do have cropland. So there are people that do farm the area and they do produce corn primarily. There is prairie restoration taking place right now. Some of that area is being converted, that was cropland is being converted to prairie. There is bottomland forest. You do have Mud Lake that's there, plus there's a marshy area for it. As the lake has dried out over this last year, you're seeing more marsh taking over for it than what you've had historically. There are restored historical buildings that are there as part of the homestead, including Sunny Acres Farm. There's also an archery range, there's a playground, and there's a picnic area. So there's a wide variety of things that can be done there for this. Now, I have to assume that now, since you've not been to Adams, you've probably not been on the trails. Is there anyone else who's not used any of the trails there at Adams? Okay, so it looks like everyone has for this. Okay. In my time since retirement here, which has been essentially a year, in 2021, I was out there 56 different times. My first visit last year was on January 3rd. My last visit last year was on December 25th. Essentially about once per week. So far this year, I've been out there 9 times, including this morning. So I was just out there having to look around to see what was going on. So what I'm going to do is I've kind of divided this up into the sections that they have there at Adams Homestead. And the first section is Cottonwood Crossing. And that's essentially the crossbar, the figure 8 that is in through here. And I'm actually going to extend this as well to on up to where the visitor center is for Adams Homestead. And this area does include, there are some wildlife viewing blinds, as you can see, being utilized by the wildlife here on the image. But there are wildlife viewing blinds that are along the east shore of Mud Lake. And then you have forest that goes in through part of the crossbar for this. For some of the things that you can see there, you do see the lake itself, of course. So this is an area of Mud Lake looking kind of to the west. There are bluebird boxes that are set up. However, this is a tree swallow that's in the bottom of this. They seem to be utilizing the bluebird boxes more so than what the bluebirds are for. And some of the area through there is being converted to prairie, as I mentioned. So they've had some wildflowers growing in through that area between the visitor center and where Mud Lake is. Even though there are wildlife blinds there, I really have not used them too much myself. Although 2 of the gentlemen that I met out there this morning are also Camera Club members, they were utilizing the blinds. One gentleman had just purchased a new camera and they were out there, he and his friend were out there taking some pictures, making sure everything works okay for this. But the photos that you see here I've not been using the blinds. I've shot from essentially the trail out into where the lake is for this. So for the lake is anywhere from about 30 to 50 acres, according to Jody Modes, who's the park manager out there. And depending if you have, of course, a wet year or a dry year. So I've seen out there, white pelicans. There's been some lesser yellow-legged shorebirds, bald eagle. These are some gadwall ducks. Here's a green-winged teal, an American widgeon, and then ringneck ducks. And Jody had mentioned to me that over the years, when you have a wetter year, you have a higher lake level, you tend to see more waterfowl out there. As the lake dries out, you have approaching 30 acres, you have less water in it, then you start seeing more of the shorebirds and marsh birds coming into play for this. So this is part of the crossbar of Cottonwood Crossing. I am looking to the east here for this. So over here on the left is Mud Lake, whereas over here on the right is just a fairly small pond. It's very intermittent. This image was
Randy?
taken early in 2021.
Yes, Carrie?
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we can only see the first slide and the full PowerPoint program. So I
Okay.
think you need to go into maybe presentation view, perhaps on the laptop.
Yeah, we might have to do that. They're only being able to see the first slide, so we need to probably go into presentation view.
Okay.
So you step out of this. Come on,
Yeah, that'll take you out of that.
and then go to this one. Should we go
So,
back to the front or?
yeah, we can go back to front. That'll work out. So they've only been able to see this one, is that correct?
Yeah. Are you able to see the second slide now?
It still looks the same as it did before, just the title slide and the entire program, the entire
That is
PowerPoint.
weird.
We can just go to slideshow.
Yep, let's stop share and reshare. Good idea. Way to go, Ruth. Hi, friends. We'll get there. Where are we? This one?
There we go.
You see more now?
Yes, thank you. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but
So now we're not seeing the right thing.
really, oh no.
That happens. See,
Yeah.
now we're good?
We're
Okay.
good on this end. Thank you so much.
This-
for letting
this
us know
works
that,
in, okay.
Carrie.
Okay, so yeah, thank you for letting us know. This is kind of what I spoke about here, dealing with some of the basics for Adams Homestead for. It shows the map of the whole area and talk about some of the basics here for this. Okay, so then I was going to move into Cottonwood Crossing. So this is the crossbar of the figure 8 that's there. I talked briefly about seeing Mud Lake, about the tree swallows, about the prairie plants they start to work on there for it. And then I showed some of the waterfowl and marsh birds that have been there. So we have the pelicans, we have bald eagles, kind of looking at the other birds here for it, and then some of the variety of ducks that are there. So then I had moved on to showing this image here of Cottonwood Crossing. This is looking east for this. On the left-hand side of the screen is Mud Lake. This was shot early in 2021. With this, the water level was fairly high at the start of the year. And this was a small pool that was over here. It was not very extensive. In years prior to 2021, there was one wet year my wife and I went on vacation in early June. When we came back from vacation, I hauled the bike out, decided to go take a trip around Adams. And during that time, water was actually covering this whole section of trail here. Now, it really wasn't all that bad. As I pedaled through that, on the downstroke of my pedal, my feet got wet. So it was high enough there to have water level for it. So it does vary somewhat from year to year, depending on what we have. Now, subsequently, that has all dried out. So that intermittent pool is gone. Lake level is pulled back somewhat, and it's even farther back than where this image is here up in the corner. So this does allow the marsh to kind of come in a little bit more. So when you're seeing marsh up here in the upper right-hand corner, this is a white-faced ibis that is a marsh bird. This is the first time I'd actually seen one out there. Subsequent visits, I actually counted 7 of them out there at one time. This is a lesser yellow legs. This was taking advantage of the pool that was just off to the south or off to the right of the prior image. Marsh wren has been out there. They've been fairly consistent for being out there. The marsh wren is down the lower left-hand corner for this. And then, of course, you still have deer that are out there, quite a few of them. As you proceed westward on Cottonwood Crossing, you do end up going into the forested area. So you can have wood anemone blooming up there. I've also seen bloodroot. I've also seen some Dutchman screeches. You can have Lincoln sparrow, and of course you have deer through the area as well too. Since I did put this together for Les Hills Audubon, in this area I've also seen American woodcock. So I know they've nested there because I also saw them out there with a couple young ones, a couple nestlings that are following mom around for this. In some early mornings that I've been there, I've been fortunate enough to hear eastern whippoorwill calling. So there is enough habitat or enough good habitat for them out there to find nesting areas for them. Lake loop. So I'm going to kind of talk about this area that goes from the west-hand side. There's a vault toilet over here as well too, that then comes around to the lake and then comes on back down again on the west shore of Mud Lake for this. Now, a couple of these images on the slide, I really debated about whether I should put them in here or not. And it has to do with the bison, simply because the bison are technically not part of Adams Homestead. They are on private property adjacent to the homestead. Now, Adams has set up there. There is a small viewing area. There's a bench set up, and there's a pathway that you can follow over to where the bench. So if you want to look at the bison, you can go ahead and do so. Be sure to make note of the sign that is up there. Bison are dangerous. They are wild animals. Keep a good distance from the fence and keep a good distance, especially from the bison as well, too, for this. These images here were all shot with a telephoto lens or a zoom function on a lens for that. I was up there one morning and I walked up towards the fence. I was not touching the fence at all. I was probably about the distance from the fence is what I am to Ruth here right now. And I had a bison come on up, probably about like the one that's down in the lower right-hand corner here, about the same distance from the fence on his side as I was on my side. Took a couple pictures, and I went to just simply back the bike out, and it was not moving back. So I just simply looked down and found out there was like a stump that was just behind the rear wheel here. I looked up and the bison is right on the other side of the fence. Didn't hear him at all. Obviously, my ears do not work as well. Didn't hear a thing. And we just kind of stood there looking at each other, for a couple seconds. And then the bison wandered on off and went back a little bit farther on his side of the fence, started pawing at the ground, and then flopped over. And I'm sure it's probably kind of a dominance display. And I figured he outweighs me, not a full mature bull, but he still outweighs me anyway. He can do what he wants to. And so my bike tire was free. So I just kept my eye on the bison and just simply backed way on down back to the trail again, got on my bike and took off again. I figured, he wants to be king of that area. That's fine. He can go ahead and do it. They are dangerous. Keep good distance from the fence and from the bison. Up and through that area, you can also get some fairly nice sunrises, like this one in the corner that's looking over towards Dakota Valley Schools. There's been a pair of American kestrels that are still there. They were there last year and they're still there this year. So I suspect they probably have had a nest up through there. You can find a variety of sparrows, such as the chipping sparrow here in the center top. And then these things over here, this is an eastern meadowlark. And eastern and western meadowlarks, the best way to tell them apart is with their song. Easterns have kind of a T-air, whereas the westerns is a bit more bubbly type of song for this, and I cannot do that very well. So yeah, I can play it. It's better than what I can do. Yeah. If you notice on this bird here, right about where this bill is, where this corner, that's white, that's an eastern. On a western meadowlark, that area is yellow. Again, not real obvious difference in looking at them for it. So this is kind of an unusual occurrence. They've been popping up more at Adams. We've been seeing more of them coming in for this as some of the prairie is being restored up there. And interestingly, from where I took this photo up here of this eastern meadowlark, over in the bison corral, I hear western singing. So these do like a little bit taller grasses like you see here, whereas the westerns are over in the corral where things are much shorter for grasses than what they are here for this. Here you also have some very nice sunrises that occur, such as this with Mud Lake over here. You can find song sparrows in there, another Lincoln sparrow. These are the same pelicans, just from the different shoreline here on this. And then again, this is kind of an unusual for Adams. This is an American avocet that's down here in the lower corner. And the avocet is a marsh bird. And this was the first time I had seen any of them out there. And I only saw one bird. I never saw anything more than one at a time that I was out there. So it was nice to see they're using the area that's there. And then if you're out there early enough, when I worked at Mercy, my shift was typically at 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. So I'm used to getting up fairly early. So this is a fairly early photo here with a waning crescent moon looking above Mud Lake. And then you can also sometimes find getting more towards moonset in the morning with some nice reflections from the lake, and there's a little bit more water in it. Riverloop. So this would be the area that kind of continues on down towards the river and back around up to Cottonwood Crossing. Now, there is one trail that I have not put on here for this. And down here, right along the river, there is a second trail just a little bit above from that. It was put in due to the flooding that occurred. And that bypass trail was put there because they were having difficulties in keeping the one that's right next to the river free of drifting sand and river silt. So that's why that other trail is there. Typically, I do not use that other trail that much. I prefer to take a look and see what's down on the river along through here. So that's why I did not include the other one in this. I am going to kind of split this out a bit into different aspects of the Riverloop Trail. So on the eastern side of this, there is an area here with a concrete wall and a bench. This trail that goes straight on the image here leads over to private property. So this is one of the side trails that's there at Adams for it. The trail that goes off to the right here in the bottom right of the image continues on with the Riverloop and goes south down towards the river. from where this image was taken, there's a section of trail behind me that I refer to as Plum Avenue. I don't think there's any specific name for it. I call it that because there are a lot of plums in through there, a lot of wild plums. It's a very good site for birds. I've seen great horned owls in that area. I've seen other songbirds in the area. It's a good place for an endangered bird known as Bell's vireo. They do nest in the area. I hear them singing quite a bit as I bicycle through there. So it is a very wonderful area to go and look, find some songbirds in through there. If you go straight from that image towards the private property, you can still see deer. They're kind of ever present for it. If you get to the edge of the property, you can look down and you can see the water tower for North Sioux City and the growth that it's experiencing there. And then the lower image on the left is part of the river trail. It continues on down to that. As you follow the river trail, you have areas where you have river forest, you have openings taking place, you have forest again, you have openings, you have forest, and you have openings as you continue for that. One of the openings, again, this is adjacent to private property. So in looking at this, you are looking onto private property here and cropland. But behind of where they took this image, there is also cropland. So this is something that someone has made arrangements with the state of South Dakota to be able to plant crops in the bottom section of the figure 8. I'm sure it has something to do with leaving a certain percentage of crops available for the wildlife that's there. As you continue south, the upper image in the right is the one that you kind of come to next. There's another bench there. And then if you continue, then the image that has the bicycle area on it here comes next. And towards the back of that image, there's another Volt toilet that's there. And then the image in the lower right, again, is from a wet year out at Adams Homestead. That's just below where the Volt toilet is. And there was water there for one summer for essentially all summer that it was there. One thing I do want to comment about this, one morning when I was out there, I was kind of going in reverse of how I'm taking you on this. I was kind of coming up to this area that's here. So I was still kind of within the trees and I'm pedaling along and I see this critter come out onto the trail. And as I look at it, it's kind of like, that doesn't really look like a raccoon. And then on the other hand, it doesn't really look like a possum. Then I see the white. And I hit the brakes right away. And again, I'm probably from about where I'm standing to the end of the two tables that are here. So I'm still a good distance away from the skunk that wandered out onto the trail. And we kind of stood there and watched each other again, because I don't think the skunk could quite figure out what it was, what I was. And eventually he or she wandered off to the east side of the trail. And I just kind of stood there and I kind of, this is a nice day. I really don't have to be anywhere in a big hurry. Let's let the skunk find their happy place. And after about a minute or so, I decided to pedal on for this. Closest I've gotten to a skunk that's out there. There have been a couple mornings where I've sniffed. Yeah, there's been one in the area. So there are around, but that's the only one that I've seen out there for. Okay, Riverside. These two images that are on here are kind of the exception. I'm with the shift that I worked, I'm very much a morning person. But for a couple of years, I was working kind of swing shift. Where due to personnel issues, we had to fill in for other shifts for us. And so these two images are some evening ones that I've taken. And the reason is that I was trying to flip myself over to working our overnight shift. So I would try to flip myself around. I'd go for a bike ride in the evening out at Adams Homestead and then go on home and get cleaned up and then try and stay up for the rest of the evening to get flipped over for. Coming down to the riverside, there is an observation deck there. And this deck, as you can see here on the right-hand side, is a very good observation area, provided you don't have a lot of ice fog like what you're having here on this. Could even see the Nebraska shore. It was so thick that morning. But I've seen other activities out there. So there have been some boaters on the river, sometimes, you know, a good deal of boaters on this. Typically, there's not a lot of traffic. But observation deck is good because I've seen osprey from here. I've seen bald eagles from here. I've seen fish, and I'm not an angler, so I don't know exactly what is inside the Missouri River for this, but I've seen fish up close to the shore. I've seen a turtle swim by. I've seen a beaver swim by. And one morning I was out here and I kind of noticed I was kind of looking down river, and I noticed something kind of moving along through the rocks, and finally got a good enough look at it. Did not get a good enough picture, anything for a picture, but I got a good enough look at it. It was a mink that was moving around in through the rocks, and it either detected me. I don't know if it heard me or what. It disappeared, so I don't know where it went to. But there is a good deal of wildlife moving in and around through there. The bald eagle, I mentioned I've seen them. They've been there quite routinely for this. This is the same eagle, just two different views of him. A little bit west of the observation deck, before the flood, there was a bridge there, and you can still see remnants of the bridge. The area that's off from the two bridge images that are here, if you go off to the right, at one point that was cropland. And the bridge served a purpose because where it is, there was a drainage ditch there to drain part of that cropland. Well, after the flood, that all got filled in with silt from the Missouri River for this. And this is why this area was, or had that new trail put in, because it was ended up taking a lot of time to get this bridge cleared out. And so that's why that other trail was there. This bridge, you can still see remnants at the very top of the hand railings on this. And the trail now, in addition to the one that's over here, the trail actually continues closer to the river than it was. When this was in effect, this was also a stopping point for me. Instead of the observation deck, I would stop on the bridge and have a look around. Bottom image here is kind of what the trail looks like now. So there's a lot more growth and such that is filled in since the flood. But one morning when I was on the bridge, I was actually looking out, and again, I kind of saw something moving along the waterway that was there, the drainage area. And as it got closer, it was a mink. I admit they're not good images here, but this was the best image I could get of the mink as it was kind of coming on down. And then I think it probably heard my foot scrape against the wood of the bridge that was there, and it kind of bolted beneath the bridge, and it did kind of pop out the other side, but again, I have no idea where it went to after that. And then with some of the silt that was there, I did enjoy some of the patterns that took place, try and make something good of some of the flooding that took place here for this. Okay, so all that area is back where this fog is on here. So as you come on up to the west side, there's a little bit of a rise right here for it. And then you pop out and you have more cropland up there. You also have some power towers that go back for this. And with the cropland that's there, with the image, especially on the top right, you can see the power line tower that's there, as well as you can see the irrigation And as you're hiking there during the summer, you do have to kind of watch if the irrigation is used, you have to kind of time things to kind of avoid this here for it, because occasionally it does come across on the trail. This is also a very good area through here to see turkey. So they spend quite a bit of time in amongst the crops as well as in the area that's over here. Deer can be in here as well too. And then with this last year, because of the fires occurring out west, you had some very spectacular sunrises and sunsets. For animals in the area, I mentioned the deer and the turkey. There are also turkey vultures down there as well. They've been sunning themselves to warm up, as well as some cedar waxwings. And there is an observation blind down there as well too, fairly close to where this image is taken. Not all of this is cropland. Some of the area back and through here off to the right of this image is being converted to prairie as well. I've also occasionally found in this area, as I've bicycled around there, I would occasionally find a bike propped up against one of the trees, or sometimes I'll see it lying down on the grass. I have to assume that this is probably a mushroom hunter that's out there looking for a few things to see what they can find. For some of the side trails. Now these trails would be like what goes up in through here in the central part of the top of the figure eight and part of the lower part of the figure eight, and the side trails that go onto the private property as well as this. Since these are grass trails, I do not use them too much. I've done so when our Audubon chapters had a birdathon, or we've had breeding bird atlas, or we've had Christmas bird camps. I will go ahead and use the trails at that time. The center one with the tree is just off of the interpretive trail. The Redtail Hawk at the top was actually over by one of the maintenance areas for Adams Homestead. And then this roller that's here is actually going over towards some private property on the side of the homestead. Now, I admit I'm not too much for plants. I do know some prairie plants, in particular some grasses, but that's about the extent of my knowledge here for this. I do know a few flowers as well too, such as this is a partridge pea here, it's some woolly vervain, but then I kind of get lost in the variety of the different sunflowers and such that are out there for this. So again, a lot of this is because of the restoration work that's being taken place, and some of it is just things coming in naturally subsequent from the flooding that took place out there. Snow on the mountain and some yellow coneflower, and of course common milkweed in through here as well. And then as I pedaled around, I've seen some decomposers. I didn't quite know else where to put them, so I added them here with the flora, even though they are not green plants. Some of them are taking effect of the wood that's here. Others are just popping up from the ground. And whether these are edible or not, I can't tell you. I have no idea, because I've not gotten involved in mushroom identification. Fauna. Again, I kind of debated whether I should put this in because the bison is technically not on Homestead, but I kind of like the demonic image that it shows here. So that's kind of why I added this in here for it. Let's see, raccoons. This one was actually down along the Riverloop, whereas Mama and her kids were in the marsh area of Mud Lake. Another eastern meadowlark that's here. And then this bird here in the upper right is a LeConte sparrow. And this is a migratory bird. This was actually taken on one of our fall trips out there. So this is a LeConte sparrow. They breed farther north than the Siouxland area for this. So he was on his way through here for it. Have couple of Redtail Hawks here, and of course, a couple of things they look for, such as the mouse that's out here. This was kind of unusual for me because the mouse was awake and alive and moving around and trying to avoid me for this. Again, it's something I don't normally see for this. Turkey vultures as well. And then there's this eastern screech owl. And this was actually over by the Volt toilet over by Windstone on the west side of Cottonwood Crossing. And I was actually coming down from the lake loop and just made the turn, and there's this owl standing right there on the trail. And I hit the brakes, put the bike down, and the owl was rather cooperative, as you can see, letting me take some pictures. But then I started thinking, you know, I'm not necessarily the only one out here. Sometimes there are people out there with dogs, and sometimes the people with dogs, the dogs are not on leashes. So I started thinking, well, gee, maybe I better try and move him back in a little bit of cover. Really didn't want to go. I finally had to take my helmet off and kind of scooched him back a little bit. And he glared at me and clacked his bill at me a couple times here, but I did get him off into the brush. So hopefully he was okay on this. And I do want to make a brief reference back to the Plum Avenue or Plum Alley that I've talked about here. Again, I was coming up one morning from the Riverloop and just made the turn to continue to the visitor center. And I was just coming out of Plum Alley and making that turn, and I see two things shoot out from the right side of the trail. One went behind me into the brush, and the other one continued up the trail. They were Coyote Pups. And I hit the brakes, went to grab the camera, and then I stopped. Where's Mom? These are pups here. And I know, coyotes can leave their pups for a while, but where's Mom? Where's Dad? Am I appearing to be a threat to these pups? So I just, put the camera back down in the pocket and started bicycling on up the trail. I have no idea. The one went behind me and I could not see it, but the other pup continued walking on the trail. So I just went very slow. Again, did not want to speed up, did not want to appear a threat. And the pup continued up the trail, and finally it went off to the east side of the trail. And at that point, I just maintained my speed, and I can't maintain the blinders on the side, not looking to the right, not looking to the left. Again, I did not want to appear to be a threat to this pup either. Didn't want to be attacked by a coyote here trying to defend her young. A couple of the less charismatic animals that I've seen there too, like an American toad, garter snake, fox snake. And actually, I've seen two different snapping turtles out there. This one was on the west side of the trail. She just got done laying some eggs, and she was headed back across the trail to get back into the water. The other one I saw was several years earlier, and it was on the other side of the lake. Same situation, except that she was still in the process of digging the hole in which to lay her eggs. Then sometimes you can find a white-tailed deer with a fairly good rack on them for it. This was probably the closest I've ever been to a bald eagle out in the wild for it. The eagle and then the swan image here were both shot on Christmas Day down by the river. I noticed the eagle first, and amazingly, the eagle did not seem to be too concerned with my presence there, because I shoot first, ask questions later, and got a little bit closer each time, taking a few more pictures for this. And the eagle sat there the whole time as I went on by for it. And the reason is I think it was concentrating on the geese and then these two trumpeter swans that were just below there in the Missouri River. And again, trumpeter swans in the area are kind of unusual. It was nice to see them there. It was kind of a bit of an event to have them. I don't know if you notice that some of the photos that I've had here do deal with fog. I do like fog pictures. And I try to kind of anticipate whether there may be some fog out there at Adams or not. And so I do try to get out there with fog and take a few images here. The fog, like in the upper left here, can be fairly light in just around where Mud Lake is, or it can be more of a pea super type thing. This is down along the river trail instead. And in some cases, it does make things difficult for birding, but I do still kind of like the atmosphere. Those are two eastern meadowlarks that were dueling vocalists on the bush out there for, oops. And I'm not always the only person out there. These were two runners that were preparing for a cross-country meet down this area, going along in the fog as well too. In the last few years, I've also started working with playing with snow biking out there. The trails out there are groomed if you have enough snow. This year we haven't had enough for it. But in talking with Jody Motes, they try to groom the whole figure eight or as much as the trail as they can. However, because of the wind, it does not always work. So they do try to keep some areas open more so than others. This image that you see here, as well as these three images here, were all shot on the same day. So have the tree and the little bit of the snow fog here, and you can see the groom trail and the one that's on the right. Of course, there was quite a bit of ice on the Missouri at that point. This day was actually a nice day. Air temp was like -3 Fahrenheit, but there was no wind, none whatsoever. So it was actually a beautiful day to be out there and to enjoy this and to see this. Okay, sorry, thought I skipped one. These two are from the same day, and then there's one from the next image. This was a different day out there, had a little bit of ice fog. And I was kind of wondering about this because this fog was fairly thick. As I got down towards the river, it began to break up, and you ended up having a very lovely day with some nice bright blue sky here and this great hoarfrost. On this image over here on the left was a different day. Hoarfrost was actually a little bit better than that. A little bit more moisture in the air. So that image, as well as these three, are from that particular day. And you can see that the hoarfrost got to be fairly thick on this. For this lower left image that's here, you're kind of wondering what this thing is. I did the same thing too when I first thought. It's a turkey. It was standing down on a log down by the river here, and it was just having a good time standing there, I guess. And I couldn't figure out what it was to begin with, but yeah, they can do interesting things with their necks here for us. Some other activities. I mentioned that there is cropland there. So in springtime, you can see people out doing field work to get the crop areas prepared. In the fall, you can see harvest taking place for some of the crop and such that's out there. That's kind of why they do have a couple caution signs out there for trucks, usually where the vehicles need to access the cropland areas that are there. This was from a number of years back. Adams Homestead, there was a very strong windstorm that came through a few years back. A lot of their trees were damaged. And so the state of South Dakota contracted with someone to remove some of the dead wood that was there. And so that was the process of this, to get rid of some of the trees that were blown down because of the windstorm. There have been walks in as well as other cross-country meets and such out there. This was the June Island Cancer Center, one of the walks they've had out there to raise money for the center. This last November, this is the first time I've seen people ice skating out there. in the southern area of Mud Lake. But they were out there, looked like they were having a good time. I didn't see them fall that much, so. Okay, for what I use on this, I started going out to Adams in 1998 with my bicycle because this is a Trek Y22 mountain bike, and it's 1998 vintage. And so I started going out there shortly after I got the mountain bike. This is a 2017 Specialized Fat Boy, and I use this a little bit more now than I use the mountain bike. For this, I also use this for snow biking. The tires on that are 4.6 inches wide. Normally, I run about 20 pounds of air in those tires. If you want to go out and do some snow biking, you need to drop the air pressure, give you a little bit more traction. So I dropped the air pressure to about 8 pounds in the tire, and it does help. I've still had a couple of experiences with some drifts where I've gone through, and it's kind of like the old show that was on television called Laugh At, and they had the little guy that was on the tricycle. He'd run into something and flop over to the side. Yep, that's what happened. I try and get into a drift, get there, and then just right over to the side. So yeah, it does happen here. But I've enjoyed experimenting with snow biking, giving me a little bit more time to get out and do some things and see some things that normally I would not. For the photos, in addition to the cameras that you see here, I also have, some of them have come from a Motorola Droid smartphone. And then I currently have a Google Pixel. So some of the images that you've seen have come from the smartphone. In addition to the cameras here, this is the main one that I use now, this Canon SX740 that's on the right hand of the screen. Earlier images are from the red Canon that's up in the upper left. I just recently had to change this out. I was having some battery issues with it. I put a battery in, it was freshly charged. It would come on up and it would shut down right away. So I'd start it up again, same thing, start it up a third time, and it would maybe work for a little bit and then it wouldn't do a thing. So I've subsequently moved to this blue Canon down here on the side, but I've not used it an awful lot for being out there at Adams simply because it's relatively new and I just have not taken it with me that much. One of the things I like about all three of these is my cycling jersey. They fit nicely in the back pocket for this, and so I can easily have easy access to them, and I don't carry too much equipment with me for this. Okay, so thank you very much for listening. Thank you for being here instead of being outside on a very nice day for this, for taking the time here. So.
If we have any questions, we'll be happy to try and answer them, right?
Yep.
Questions or comments? Do we have anything from the group here? Stop sharing. Where are we at? There's a question over here. The question is, do they allow electric bikes?
I haven't heard anything. I have not heard anything against it. I have seen, as I've been out there, I have seen people with electric bikes, and I recognize it because of the large where the battery pack is. And I've not heard anything, for or against. I know people are there. Probably the best thing is, as long as you're not being a jerk. It's probably the best way to say it. I know people have asked about even the trails here in town, and technically they are not allowed on the trails, but I don't know of anyone who's going to enforce that, again, as long as you're not being a jerk about things. According to the people at Albrecht Cycle, there is work in progress at the state level to allow electric bikes to be on the trails, but I'm not sure where it is at this point. So, but I think the main thing is, as long as you're curious to others, I usually try to, if someone is walking on the trail, I usually try to yell out to them, well, no, I'm back there.
Any others? If you did not register, we're glad you made yourself here as well. We have about 18 people in the room. And if you'd want to leave your name and phone number or email and want more information about Lost Hills Wild Ones, feel free. We have a great display in the back of the room. And as Ruth mentioned earlier, we have a lot of great things going on this year, ways for you to be involved, and hopefully you can tap into some of those great opportunities. Any other questions?
Yeah, Dawn, we have a question in our chat.
Okay.
Bonnie's asking, there was tansy along one of the trails. Is that natural or was it seeded? She's concerned, I think, because it can be very invasive. And she says thank you to everyone.
There was what, tansy?
Tansy.
Ah. That would be something we'd need to let Jody know to address, because yeah, it is very invasive. I'm sure they probably didn't plant it, but I don't know that to be sure. True.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for, do you know what area that was, Bonnie? Nope, okay.
Well, we can get that information later to pass on to Jody.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Randy said heard a great horned owl. What is the sound of a great horned owl?
Ruth asks, Randy said he heard the sound of a great horned owl and she'd like to know what that sound is. It's like the hoot owl. Ooh, 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 ooh. You can do it before you can pull it up. I'm not as good as the app though. Yeah. Can you get it from over here to the speaker, Andy? Maybe. Go on. Not going. Oh, there we go. Volume must be up.
Barn owls.
Well, let's see, we can,
That's all I got.
actually, that's pretty good, but, okay.
Oh, that's good.
And then
That's a female. Oh, funny. Very good.
the screech owls are a little bit more of a hoarse whinny instead, for what they sound like. Yeah.
Not so good at that one.
And there's a
People are really
trill to
good.
it.
The trill, the
Yeah.
tremulous trill. So, any other questions in the chat?
I'm not seeing any, and I think they've had ample opportunity. So I think he's got
right.
his presentation down to where we don't have to ask any questions.